Hey, welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk about culinary knives, or knives that I use in the kitchen. And all of us cook, we have kitchens, we have knives, and in a lot of cases, even though we really like knives, we may not pay that much attention to what's being used in the kitchen, especially if we're not the one doing the cooking. For me, when I was in my mid-30s, my wife was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and so lifting heavy pots and pans and standing in the kitchen for long periods of time was really difficult for her. So I took over the role of doing all the cooking. And being a guy that likes tools and knives, I thought, it would be good to find some tools, some knives that I really enjoy using. And so this started me on a journey of trying to figure out what that is. And back then the cooking channels like the Food Network and that were all very new, and so I'm watching some of the chefs on there and trying to learn about techniques and learn about the kitchen cutlery. And up to that point we just had just a mishmash of stuff that probably got at garage sales and whatnot that was in our kitchen. And I started actually looking at the knives I was using. And it started with a very inexpensive Henkel's, not one of their forged chef knives, but one that is more stamped sheet metal. And I started using that, and then I found a Wusthof chef's knife, that literally at a thrift store, and it was really nice and I really liked it. My son was, by that point when I found that, was in culinary school and had gotten a job in Washington D.C. at the Metropolitan Club in D.C. And so he was going to go to Washington, D.C. I gave him that knife to use because he needed a professional chef knife. And so I actually later on found another Wusthof, and I really liked the knife, but it was very heavy. I ended up giving that one to my son also. So he has both of those. But, over the years I tried a bunch of different knives. And if you have watched my channel, I'm not a very conventional guy when it comes to things. And I tend to go a different path than a lot of people do. So what I want to do is on my workbench here, I'm going to show you some of the knives that I have used and I do use, and talk about why I like them. And maybe it'll get you to thinking about what you use in your kitchen, and should you maybe venture into, especially if you like knives, venture into having some tools in the kitchen that really you enjoy using, and you like the quality of them, you like the way they perform. So that's kind of it. Let's take a look at what's on the bench before we get started. If you would, please do subscribe to the channel, and let's see what we've got on the workbench. Okay, let's take a look at some of my knives I've used in the kitchen. Well, like I said, I bought originally a Henkel's. It was an inexpensive stamped sheet metal style Henkel's. Worked okay, but I ended up giving it, I'm not sure who I gave it to. I gave it to somebody. Then I found a Wusthof Trident chef knife, 8-inch, very traditional chef knife, and I ended up gifting that to my son as he became a chef, and or actually a cook at that point. And I did later on find another Wusthof. I also ended up gifting that one to my son, and that was really because he broke the tip off the first one, and I reshaped it for him, but he just really wasn't happy that it was a tiny bit shorter than it used to be, so I gave him the other one. He has them both now. He uses them both, but he is a professional chef, so having good quality professional chef knives I think is a good thing for him. But being half Japanese, I decided I would like to have something from the Japanese culture, and so at the time there was a online store called Japan Woodworker, and you could buy all kinds of Japanese tools as well as culinary knives and such from them. And I ordered this knife. It's a Santoku. It's a 6-inch Santoku. You can see the blade is forged. You can see the unevenness where this is hammered. And the story from the Japanese is that this scale the forging scale left on the blade protects the soul of the blade. It is laminated steel, so you can see there's a center layer that is different than the outer layers. So that the outer two sides are a different steel than the center, and you can kind of see that here. And so the center material or center steel is much harder than what's on the outside. The idea is that gives it some flexibility and strength, but keeps it from being too brittle, and yet the edge can be very hard. Now these are hardened really hard. I believe the Rockwell hardness on this is like 62 or 64 on the Rockwell C scale. It was really hard. And I've really enjoyed using this knife. It's, you know, it's not super heavy. I don't know, there's something about it being literally handmade. It was not very expensive either. Just really been a joy to use. I do like it, but it is carbon steel, so it will rust if you don't dry it and oil it. Traditionally, the Japanese use oil called camellia oil, and I've tried that. I've also just used like olive oil. But the thing is, you wipe it off, and you know, put oil on it after it's dry, wipe it off, and try to get all the oil off you can wipe off of it. But you're leaving enough in the pores that it won't rust. It is going to, you know, develop a patina over time, but this thing will get crazy sharp. And it's such a pleasure to use. So that's one I still use and really enjoy using. And so much to the point that not too long ago I ordered this petty knife, and I actually bought this off eBay, and it wasn't very expensive. Again, you can see that it's got a center hard layer of steel. You can really see it on that side. And the outer layers are a softer steel, hand forged, and you know, same kind of traditional, I think it's magnolia that they use on the handles. Again, gets very sharp, holds an edge really well, and this is a petty knife, so it's a little bit bigger than a paring knife, smaller than a sandwich, kind of an in-between knife, but it's kind of a popular size right now. And so that's been really nice to use. I really enjoy it. Now, like I say, I tried a bunch of different chef knives. At one point, I actually made my own. So this was made out of an old saw blade. And at the time, I didn't really have the kind of grinding tools you would need to properly bevel this. So it's got a fairly short bevel from here to the edge. However, it is not very thick. And, you know, it works fairly well. I've thought maybe that now I have some maybe better equipment, I should try to rebevel it, give it a little bit more acute of an angle. However, I really don't use it much. The handle's made of mahogany, but I literally cut this out of and then shaped it from a piece of an old saw blade. I don't think it's really the greatest steel either. It was a really old saw blade that was my dad had, that was just some scrap. It had been broken, and so he had just saved it for the material. But the saw blade was probably over 100 years old, and I mean, it was probably okay steel, but this hasn't really proven to, I mean, it looks cool, but it just hasn't proven to be the best knife. It does work, but you just have to sharpen it a lot. And then I do some Dutch oven cooking, and with the Dutch oven cooking, you know, trying to use something that's maybe a bit more traditional. I know this really isn't that old. It's an old hickory. This one was probably, I don't know, maybe back in the 50s or something. It is an Ontario knife. So this is made in the USA. It's an Ontario knife, and you know, you see a lot of old hickories, but you don't see too many old hickories that are the chef knife shape. You see a lot of butcher knives and boning knives and some of the other shapes, but the chef knife shape is not that common. And it's got a nice long bevel on it. It holds an edge pretty well. These are 1095 steel, as I understand it. So when I'm out doing Dutch oven cooking, this kind of fits that old Western kind of theme, and so sometimes I'll take and use this. But yeah, this was just another thrift store find. So, you know, like I say, I've tried using a lot of different chef knives. I ran across this knife, which is not a chef knife, at a thrift store, and it had been dishwashered until the original scales had just rotted off from being dishwashered. So I made some curly maple scales for it that I think they look pretty cool. And it's also a Wusthof. You can see it here. It doesn't actually say Wusthof, it says Trident. And I believe that's a Wusthof. That's what you'll see on the Wusthof knives, is this Trident name. And the steel is this X50 CRMOV 15. This steel is not super high carbon. It's like 50 or 0.5% carbon. It's got 15% chromium, molybdenum, and vanadium in it. And these are not hardened like the Japanese knives. These are hardened to like Rockwell 52, 54. they're made to be sharpened with a steel, and so what happens is as you're using it, the edge tends to roll a little bit, and the steel straightens that edge out. The Japanese knives you cannot sharpen with a steel. You have to put them on a stone when they get dull and resharpen them. Whereas these knives, you can touch them up with a steel as you use them to keep them sharp. So it's a little bit different thinking in how knives are done. But this is, this Trident, this German knife is, considered a really high quality knife. This is a sandwich knife, and I know it doesn't really work like a chef knife because your knuckles won't clear the board. But if I'm using it on a cutting board that's near the edge of the counter, I can get away with it. And I like how thin and light it is. It's very slicey. And so I use this a lot, kind of like a chef knife. Like I say, it doesn't have enough room for your knuckles to clear the cutting board unless you're near the edge of the board or the edge of the table. And so sometimes I do that. But I don't know, I just like the lighter weight. And so, the full-size Wusthof chef knife to me just seemed heavy and kind of clunky. And so this is one I've really enjoyed using. I use it a lot. And not too long after that, I was at a woodcraft store, and they started selling these kits. And I used some of the same curly maple to make scales for this one. And it was a kit. And this is it says Zen 67-layer Japanese steel. And so you can see all these layers. I'm not going to try to count them, but they're supposed to be 67. The center steel on this is VG10. Same steel that like Spyderco uses on the Delica 4. So it's a very good high carbon stainless steel. Again, these are hardened much like the other Japanese knife in the 62 to 64 range. So it holds an edge really well. You don't use a steel with this. But this is got enough clearance. It's almost clears your knuckles on a cutting board. If you kind of use a pinch grip on it, you can clear the cutting board just fine. And I tend to use this right now. This is one I probably use more than any other. It's only 5 inches, so it's not very long, but it's very lightweight. And right now I'm just cooking for my wife and I, just the two of us. So I'm not making large quantities of food generally. So this just seems to work really well as kind of a universal knife. And I like the Japanese santoku shape. It seems to be very functional. And so this was a kit. You can go to woodcraft.com or go to, if you have a woodcraft store in your town, they sell all kinds of these kits, and they have this Zen brand. They have both in the 67-layer and a 3-layer versions. The kits aren't very expensive. They often run them on sale, and they come with the blade and the rivets. You have to supply your own scale material, but being a woodcraft store, they have all kinds of exotic woods you can get for the handles or the scales. And they have a wide range of knife kits. So if you're into making kits, woodcraft.com, great place to go. So yeah, this is something I currently am I use a lot right now. Another thing that I tried doing in this journey is a lot of the traditional Japanese cooking knives or chef knives are single bevel. So they'll have a bevel on one side and they're flat on the other. There's no bevel on the back side. And so I took some bandsaw. This is like industrial bandsaw material from a broken bandsaw. And I shaped this blade out of it, gave it a single bevel. As thin as this was, a single bevel worked pretty well because it's so thin that trying to do 2 bevels would make for pretty short bevels. Made the handles out of mahogany. Same wood that I used for that other saw blade knife. And this works really well for thin slices. So when you're slicing something off and you want really thin slices, the single bevel will slice straight down and make the slices fall over to the side on the right. You can buy single bevel knives in some of the Japanese knife supplies, and you can buy them in right or left-handed. This one obviously I've done for right-handed use. Single bevel knife, if you ever have a chance to use a single bevel knife, they're really interesting to use, because if you're doing something where you're making thin slices, like if you're slicing some meat real thin, or if you're slicing even vegetables for garnish and things like that really thin, it works really well. This is carbon steel, so I have to keep it oiled, and it's being a bandsaw blade, it's very flexible. But it's actually kind of as an experiment I made this, but it has worked quite well. So that's something I kind of created. Recently, I did a review on this Russell Green River hunting and fishing knife. And I've started using this quite a bit in the kitchen. Again, it's not like a chef knife. You can't really clear the board with your fingers. But when you're just slicing things that you don't have to chop like you do, that you would do with a chef knife, this works quite well. So this is, you can see it's developing some patina. It's carbon steel, so you have to oil it, but this is finding increasing use in my kitchen. I really enjoy using this Russell Green River. Kind of a cool knife. Now, paring knives. As much fun as I've had looking at chef knives, I have to admit to not having done as much with paring knives. Now, I found a couple of these. I don't even remember where I found them now. I think one of them I found at a gun show. But these are Victorinox paring knives. If I can get this to focus, you can see this one, it says Victorinox on the handle, and this one, it says it actually on the blade. And these are just inexpensive paring knives from Victorinox. And these have two slightly different blade shapes. This is more of a drop point. This is more kind of a spear point. They both work really well. You know, they're plastic molded. I'm not sure how far the blade goes into the tang. The blades are very thin. But as a paring knife, they hold a decent edge and they work pretty well. Woodcraft makes a paring knife kit using this same 67 layer material here. Every time I go to Woodcraft, I keep thinking I need to get one of the kits and make a paring knife that matches this. And so I may have to do that now that I'm thinking about it again. The other thing that I use for a paring knife quite often is this Open L garden knife, number 8 garden knife. I often find this, especially if this is in my pocket and I need a paring knife, I often use this. And it's a similar kind of blade shape. Open L's are good, you know, good stainless steel, and I enjoy using it. So this often gets used as a paring knife in the kitchen, even though it's not really a kitchen knife. So that's kind of my knife journey at the moment. Oh, I do have one other. Actually, I had this gifted to me recently. This is an Maru professional chef knife. I'm not sure about that. And I'm not real sure who Maru is. It looks like a nicely made knife. It was given to me as a Christmas present. Really pretty wood, and looks really beautifully made. It's not overly heavy, and this is, it's kind of funny. The instruction book with this states that it's 7CR, I forget which it is, 7CR 15 or 16, something like that, MOV. It's a Chinese steel, but it actually says that the knife is made of this steel, and it's a German steel, and it's not a German steel. It's Chinese. This is made in China, and it works okay. I like it well enough. It was a gift, like I say, and so I've kind of enjoyed using it. It's really pretty. But for me, unless I'm chopping things, a large chef knife just doesn't really find much use in my kitchen. And even when I do have things to chop, like onions, I'll use that little 5-inch Santoku most of the time. But this is kind of one, like I say, it was a gift, and I am using it some. It's really pretty. And before you groan too much about the 7CR, whatever it is, MOV Chinese steel, the 7CR series steels are 0.75% carbon. So it actually has more carbon in the stainless steel than this German knife does. So it actually has the potential to get a little harder than that German knife. And so I'm I haven't been disappointed with the performance at all. It's just, it's a full-size chef knife, and I've kind of gotten accustomed to using something a little bit smaller. Anyway, like I say, at the moment, this is kind of my the knife of preference that I'm using, and partly because I made the kit, made the handles for it, and it's Japanese. Culturally, it's a Japanese style knife, and that kind of works for me. And so I really enjoyed it. Like I say, if you're into making knife kits, or if you want to give that a try, woodcraft.com. Anyway, that's my cutlery, culinary cutlery journey. Well, that's my culinary knife journey so far. It's the journey hasn't ended. I'm still, when I see new things, I like to try new things, and so I'm sure that there'll be new knives that I have in my kit from time to time. But for now, this is kind of where I'm at. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed looking at some of that and maybe got you thinking about what you use in your kitchen. If you have any thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I always love hearing from you. And as always, thanks for watching.